The Money Show.
Personal Finance with Warren Ingram.
A reminder that Warren Ingram is a certified financial planner at Galileo Capital. Warren, good evening. We're talking tonight about the most important financial decision you'll make at retirement. And I suppose for most of us, we spend so much time thinking about getting enough money to retire, we don't really think about the kind of couple of days afterwards and the decisions we have to make.
Absolutely, and a lot of people are kind of don't even think about the actual retirement part because they're trying to avoid the thought. Sometimes it's very scary. Other people are super excited, but the mechanics of where's my first sort of paycheck going to come from? The day after I'm not working for a living anymore is something that a lot of people don't really focus on, and I would think it's probably going to be right up there with how do I pay for my house as one of the most important financial decisions we need to work through and think through and plan for, preferably quite a while before retirement.
Okay, so there's really a sort of big fork in the road here, and what you want to do is you want to turn your savings into a monthly income. What are your main choices?
We generally, with the way that the regulations are set up in South Africa, we have two broad options. So the one is, I guess in the old days, it would have been called just your guaranteed pension. You'd get a monthly amount into your bank account. It wouldn't vary. It would, from one year to the next, it would just go up with inflation, and you wouldn't worry about stock market movements, etc. None of that mattered to you. You just got your pension and you carried on with life. And nowadays, those are called life annuities. So they still exist, and still have a role to play in some people's lives. And then we've got the newer one, which is called the living annuity, which is an evolution from the life annuity stage, where it's much more flexible. So you have an investment portfolio that's still a retirement fund, but now you can draw an income, and you have a lot more room to decide how much you're going to draw, and also a lot more say over how that money is invested, and then also who gets the money if there's any left on your death.
Okay. They're fundamentally different, so it's really useful that their names are so different. One's a life annuity and one's a living annuity, for goodness sake. Okay, let's start with a life annuity. And small words here, because you're actually taking that out with an insurance company.
Exactly right. So let's say you retire and you've got a lump sum of 10 million rand that's sitting in your retirement fund. What you're doing is you're taking that 10 million rand and you're basically paying that money to an insurance company. And so it's just almost like a contract. You're now giving them money as a lump sum. And the thing that you get in return from them is a guarantee that they're going to pay you a monthly pension for the rest of your life. And so if you live for another few years and you die, then that's the deal. However, if you live and one of the people that makes a record-breaking age of 105 or 110, it's their job to keep paying you a pension until you die. So that's the one very big thing to understand here is you don't control your 10 million rand lump sum after you've signed this. That's gone. You've paid an insurance company. They haven't stolen the money. They've undertaken a lifelong commitment to you. And so it's the first big thing to understand. You're paying them to give you an income, and it's all things are known about this on day one. There's no variability, and I think the kind of tweak that you can make to this is you can, if you are married, you can say, I would like to make sure that my spouse gets a pension if I die. So the money doesn't necessarily just disappear on the first person's death. It can carry on. Usually what happens is it will be about 75% of the pension that you were getting. So if you were getting 100,000 Rand a month, then your spouse will now get 75,000 Rand a month. But when your spouse dies, then there is no capital left over. The contract has been fulfilled. The insurance company's done their job. And you've had the benefit or potentially the loss if you did die relatively young. I think the one thing to understand is it is a lifelong contract. So you can't retire, go into a life annuity, and then 5 years in or 10 years in go, oh no, goodness gracious, I'd like to switch to a living annuity, please. That ship sails on the day you sign that contract. So it is an important thing to be clear as to what you want. And I would say maybe the one thing you're really buying here is a certainty of income. You're not at all going to be worrying about, am I getting paid next month? What has the market done? What are the drawdowns I need to make? Any of that stuff. It's all understood on the first day. And the only thing that changes is how much they increase your pension every year. And hopefully that's, with the inflation rate.
So that's what I was going to come to. What about inflation? How does that work?
So the insurance companies always have little tweaks and little kind of variations on life annuity. So for example, you could say I want an income that then goes up with the official inflation rate, so the CPI rate. And if you do that, then they'll give you a number. They'll give you a quote to say, well, we'll pay you X amount of rands. You could take the option, which I wouldn't like, where you could just say, I want the maximum amount of income today. I'm not worrying about inflation. Just give me the highest amount I can today. But then it stays exactly the same for the rest of your life. The danger with that, of course, is the buying power of that money will be much worse, in 20 or 25 years' time. So it's not a clever one to take. Or there might be the option of saying that I want slightly above inflation increases. Some of the companies will do that. The thing to understand here is that the more you want as an increase every year, the smaller your starting pension is going to be. Now that's really the trade-off you're going to make. So in one instance, if you said I want a flat income with no escalations, might start at 100,000. But if you say, well, actually, I want it to go up with CPI plus 1% a year, then you might be starting at 60,000 as an example. And so that's the probably the biggest sort of flexibility that you have when choosing a life annuity.
Okay, so I've got all the money that I've been able to save over my working life, and I give it to them on a promise that they will then sort of, we take a bet with each other, they pool it, which is how they sort of win. Actuaries always win. What happens, Warren, if they go bust?
That's your big risk in something like this, is that you're taking on the credit risk of the life assurer. I think it's important to say that they're not going out there and sort of gambling or making high risk investments on your behalf. They are typically highly regulated in the way that they manage this pool of money. So what they will be doing is they'll, for example, be buying government bonds that have guaranteed payouts, in 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So they're accumulating the money and making sure that the assets that they're managing match the liabilities, which are the income that they've got to pay their members. So there is some risk, but I think it's probably in the same risk, for example, as putting your money on deposit with a large bank. There is a risk that the bank goes south, but I think it's a very small risk. And the truth is, if that happens, it probably means that the whole financial system is gone and all our investments are not gone as well.
Well, that's cheerful. We started with AI, and this is where we end tonight. Okay, that's a life annuity. Now, the thing that's not related to it at all, despite having a similar name, a living annuity. That's a very different option.
Can we start a campaign to teach insurance and investment companies to come up with better names that are self-explanatory? That would be a real accomplishment. Living annuity, you take your retirement fund, same example, you've got 10 million rand, and you decide that you want a lot more say and control over how your money is invested and how much you get paid. And so what you do is you invest that money in your name, but with usually an investment platform. So the regulations are quite strict here, in that once you choose to put your money in a living annuity, you're obliged by law to draw at the lowest amount 2.5% a year of the value of your investment, up to a maximum of 17.5% a year. So just to make clear there that you can't take your 10 million rand, put it in a living annuity, and then say, I don't need any money this year. I've still got quite a lot of cash that I saved up for the first year of retirement. I'm not going to take an income. That's not possible. Equally, that if you're in year 5 of your living annuity and you decide I need a lot more money, I need 30% of the value of my retirement fund this year, you can't do that either. You are controlled to that 2.5 to 17.5% drawdown. And the other trick there is that you are allowed to change it once a year. So let's say you retire in March, then that will become the anniversary of your investment. And so every March, you can say, instead of drawing 2.5%, I'd now like to draw 3% or 4% or something like that. And so that's the key part here around the income that you draw. You do have some say on that, and we'll get back to the dangers of that income, but you have a lot of control there. The second thing is you also have a lot more control over how the money is invested. So you can, for example, say, I want it all to go into 4 different money market unit trusts. I don't want to ever invest in anything that's got to do with shares, and I only want these investments to earn interest. I don't want to take stock market risk. I think that would be an awful idea, but you have the ability to do that. Or you could say, well, I want half of it in cash and government bonds and the other half in stock markets. And you could actually push that stock market exposure much higher if you wanted to. And again, you've got flexibility there in terms of being able to change that portfolio of unit trusts without asking permission from some big insurance company. You have a lot more flexibility there. So the two things you're getting from a living annuity that you don't get from a life annuity is the flexibility of income, and then the flexibility as to how your investments are actually allocated, in terms of exposure to cash, bonds, property, and shares. The one important thing about living annuities, when you die, on your living annuity, you will have made an application to invest, and you would have nominated who would be the beneficiary of your living annuity, and that's where the money goes on your death. So it's not part of your will. It doesn't, you're not relying on the executor of your estate to then decide where the money goes. You've nominated that beneficiary at the time that you start the living annuity, and the money will automatically be paid to them once they've got your death certificate and your and then the beneficiary nomination. So the money doesn't die with you, it carries on. So if you're relatively prudent in the way that you draw money, let's say you only ever draw 2.5% of the value of that investment, then there might be a large lump sum left behind, and that's money that would go potentially to your spouse or to your children, or actually anybody that you decide. One nice thing there, Stephen, is that you can change your beneficiary nominations later in life. So, if your spouse dies, you can then change the beneficiary nomination to say, well, I'd like it to go to my favorite child and not the other one, or I want it equally paid to both, or whatever the deal is. So, that's one thing that you do get, again, from a living annuity. The one big thing, and I know I'm waffling, sorry, is you carry all of the risk of the investment decisions. There is no guarantee in this. So if you invest all the money badly, for example, that you do only select money market unit trusts, and 15 years later, the buying power of your money has been eroded completely by inflation, that's a risk you carry, and so you will find the buying power of your money almost gone to zero. And so you have to be very careful about how you invest. Equally, if you start early on with a very high amount that you draw from the investment, so you start with drawing 10% a year and you're retiring at 55, the likelihood is you will run out of money sort of 12 years in and have nothing left. And for me, that's a huge risk we need to be careful of.
Okay. There's so much to look at with this and to sort of make a decision about which is right. We also have a question tonight from Brenda. Brenda's saying, I'm 55 years young. I've been working for 30 years. I only started taking retirement seriously 10 years ago. My retirement fund balance is around 1.4 million rand. I earn 38,000 rand a month. My financial advisor says I need to save more. My children are still at university. Our household budget is stretched. I have about 10 years until I'd like to retire. Is there a realistic way to catch up all at this stage, or do I just have to accept I'll be working for longer? What should I be focusing on right now? That's from Brenda. We'll have an answer for you, Brenda, and a sort of summation of your two options, a living annuity or a life annuity, in just a moment.
The Money Show.
Personal Finance with Warren Ingram.
6 minutes to 8 the time. All right, Warren, Brenda's question, 55. I have around 1.4 million rand in retirement savings. I earn 38,000 rand a month. I want to retire in 10 years' time. Do I need to accept I'll be working for longer?
I think the answer is probably a combination for Brenda. To me, the one thing is that if the household budget is stretched right now and your kids are at university, then there's nothing else to do but make sure that you get your kids through university, and their job is to make sure they don't do an extra year. And so, holding the fort and just, staying steady as you can now is the best thing you can do. There is nothing else to do. But that means that, potentially in 3 years' time, you can start to take all the money that you were putting into education and supporting your children, and then allocating that extra money to your savings, and making sure that you've maxed your tax-free savings account, you've maxed your retirement fund contributions if you can. And then seeing if there is any scope now that you have fewer financial dependents to improve your budget a little bit. At the same time, I would say that you should be looking at the next 7 years after the kids are out of the house, to see that how can you remain current, how can you remain viable in the workforce, so that potentially you might not work full time from age 65 onwards, but can you do a part-time gig where maybe you earn half of your original salary working half days, or for a smaller company where they would value your experience but potentially can't afford the salary that you were on. And the idea would be, can you keep working at least part-time until age 70, as an example? And that extra 5-year period, means that you're not drawing on your investment. So that helps you a heck of a lot. And potentially that, if you can't save more, you're allowing the capital to compound for that extra 5-year period. And so it's almost a double benefit. And so definitely not a hopeless situation. It's something to stay focused on. I think that was the words in Brenda's email. What should I be focusing on? Focus on controlling costs, making sure your kids get a job as fast as possible so that you're not looking after them financially once they've qualified, and then taking every single cent of that extra money and saving it and investing. And maybe just avoid the get-rich schemes now. Don't do something crazy with your money trying to catch up. That's the secret to disaster, unfortunately.
Yeah, very interesting to sort of see it like that. Okay, Brenda, look, good luck with the decision. Warren, we've got about 2 minutes left. So we've got the living annuity, we've got the life annuity. The life annuity, you get the certainty, you put all the money in, you don't really have to do anything else unless something goes really badly wrong. And then the living annuity is really when you have a lot more control, you can decide how much you're going to take out, you can still do some of your own investing. How do you decide which is the right one?
I think maybe two big factors. The one would be if you know that you've got a fairly comfortable retirement and you know that you can draw, let's say, between 2.5% to 5% of your retirement funds per year, and that will be sufficient for your expenses, then I think a living annuity is the right answer, because it means that you will be able to leave money behind to your beneficiaries and still have a very good life, allowing that capital to grow. If, however, you hit retirement and you know that you don't have a heck of a lot of money and you might have to draw a large amount, then the chances are that the life annuity might actually pay you a better starting income. And at least you know that for the rest of your life, you'll be paid that pension, hopefully escalating with inflation. So to me, your financial position is critical in this. And then the second one, which is a bit more tricky, is if you've got longevity in your family where everyone on both sides of your family got to their late 90s or early hundreds, and you're in very good health, and you've got a long life ahead of you in retirement, then again a life annuity might work for you, because you're going to beat the actuaries. You're going to outlive your life expectancy of your average.
That's such an interesting way to look at it. Warren Ingram, thank you so much. So interesting. A certified financial planner at Galileo Capital.